This is a Pokémon Nuzlocke, where Pokémon retire after fighting gym leaders. Let's get you up to speed. The main rule is this. Every time I defeat a gym leader, the team I used for that battle is officially retired. They get to kick back at the luxury resort, sipping Pecha Berry smoothies and basking in the sun. Sounds nice, right? Except for me, because it means that I can't use those Pokemon ever again. It's a mental battle of tough decisions and Pokemon management. Before we dive into the chaos, here are the official rules that I need to follow. The standard Nuzlocke rule set is in play. Feel free to pause it and have a bit more of a look. The shiny clause is also active. If I find a shiny, I'm allowed to catch and use it. Not that I'm expecting to find one, but hey, I could dream. And most importantly is the retirement rule. Lastly, I did actually add a TM clause, but I don't think I actually used it. If you want some more information on what that actually is, it'll be in the description. And with that groundwork laid out, it's time to take our opening step into this Gymlocke challenge. Let's see how far we can make it before disaster inevitably strikes. The first major decision of the run was choosing my starter, and I went with Boggle the Squirtle. A solid choice, offering both bulk and versatility. Though, using him too soon in a gym battle would mean an early retirement. But before that could even be a concern, Gary challenged us to a one-on-one. Boggle made quick work of his team, sending our rival packing. With that, we ran some errands, delivered Oak's parcel and got the Pokedex, and more importantly, Pokeballs. Now, the real expansion began. Route 1 gifted us Risk the Rattata, a scrappy little rodent with more speed than sense. On Route 22, we picked up Jenga the Mankey, a fantastic early game powerhouse that could wipe the floor with Brock's rock types. That is, if I was willing to burn such a valuable asset this early. Heading into Route 2, we encountered a very hungover old man who, instead of offering coffee, demonstrated his barely functioning ability to catch a Weedle. Inspired by this life lesson, we caught Catan the Caterpie, rounding out our squad. With the full team starting to take shape, we ventured into Viridian Forest. A maze of trees, bug catchers, and the occasional trainer who somehow got lost on a straight path. Our first encounter, though, was codenamed the Weedle, a future Beedrill with the potential to be useful, though considering Beedrill's track record, useful might be a bit of a strong word. But with codename in tow, we finally emerged in Pewter City. With Brock looming as our first major battle, the decision was simple. We had to go Jenga the Mankey. His fighting typing made him the obvious choice, and if we played this right, we could walk out with a badge and minimal risk. Stepping into the gym, we went straight for the leader. Geodude hit the field first, but 2 karate chops later, and the boulder was nothing more than pebbles. Jenga leveled up just in time for Onyx, who barely scratched us with a tackle before getting obliterated by a single low kick. Just like that, the boulder badge was ours. But Jenga, his work here was done. He's off to the Luxury Ball Resort, retiring to a life of being my personal director. What's that, Jenga? Promote the channel. Oh, fine. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're enjoying the content. Only a very small percentage of you are subs, and that's probably due to the channel being so small, but it is a really massive help for me. Thanks! Each new sub will be a banana donated to my Really, Jenga? With our running shoes finally in hand, we sprinted onto Route 3, where we added Perudo the Nidoran to the squad. Meanwhile, the team started evolving. Codename became a Beedrill, Risk bulked up into a Raticate, and Boggle emerged as a Wartortle. Fully powered up, we entered Mount Moon, where our first encounter brought us Stockpile the Zubat. It wasn't long before we ran into Team Rocket, who were, as expected, up to absolutely no good. Their grunts proved to be little more than EXP fodder as we carved our way through their hideout in a cave setup. At the end of the tunnel, we met the Super Nerd guarding 2 fossils. A quick battle later and we claimed the Helix fossil, because obviously, if we're going to make tough choices later in this run, we need Lord Helix Divine Wisdom on our side. Emerging from Mount Moon, we immediately caught and ladders the Ekans, before making our way to Cerulean City. On Route 24, we found an Abra, and then immediately lost an Abra, as it teleported out of existence before we could even blink. Next stop was Bill's house, where we saved the self-imposed science experiment from his Clefairy purgatory. In return, he generously handed over the SS Anne ticket. Before heading to the gym, we gathered some more recruits. Jaipur the Pidgey, Rummy the Spearow, and Tapple the Meowth, whose pickup ability and access to Thief could prove incredibly useful down the line. With a solid squad, it was time to face Misty and decide who would be taking the plunge into an early retirement. For Misty's gym, we made a bold decision. Codename the Beedrill would take on the entire fight alone. Was it risky? Absolutely. But this early in the run, if things went sideways, we'd at least have time to reset and restart. Staryu led the charge, opting for a Harden as we went straight for focus energy, fishing for crits. Another Harden and we opt for Fury Attack, landing a critical hit to chip it down. Then came the first Water Pulse, but Codename held on, striking back with another Fury Attack, scoring 2 crits to finish off the star. Then came Starmie, a much greater threat. It struck with Water Pulse as we retaliated with Twin Needle, hoping for a miracle. Next turn, another Water Pulse sent us down into the red, but Twin Needle landed again and Misty's ace went down. With that, the Cascade badge was ours, but Codename, it was time for retirement. After carrying us through an intense battle, Beedrill traded the life of a warrior for a pollinator at the resort. 2 badges down, and we were into Vermilion City. After travelling through it, we boarded the SS Anne and swiftly put Gary in his place yet again. Then, we did something truly heroic. Rubbed an old man's back until he felt generous enough to hand over HMO 1 Cup. Whatever works, I guess. With that out of the way, we made our next big pickup, Scrabble the Diglett from Diglett's Cave. Given Lieutenant Surge's electric-type team, this little mole mouse worm thing was about to earn its spot in history. So, with very little preparation, we stormed into Lieutenant Surge's gym and Scrabble got to work. We hit Voltorb with Magnitude, but a low roll means that it could return a sonic boom before we eventually took it down. Pikachu came in next, but one well-timed dig was enough to take it down as well. Then came Raichu, and this is where things got quite dicey. We hit some digs after Surge's ace started spamming Double Team, making every hit a gamble. But after a tense back and forth, Surge healed up, and the fight felt like it was just slipping away. And that's when we took a risk with Magnitude. A high roll, and it's game over. A low roll, and it's game over again. We landed a Magnitude 7, right in the middle. But fortunately for us, Raichu just about went down, and the Thunder Badge was ours. So what for Scrabble? Well, its job was done. Off to the Luxury Ball Resort, where it could dig as many beach modes as its heart desired. Before continuing, we backtracked to Cerulean City and cut our way into Route 10, where we added Mahjong the Voltorb to the team. From there, we made our way towards Rock Tunnel, ready to push through until we realised we'd completely forgotten to grab Flash. So after a quick detour to actually get the HM, we stepped into Rock Tunnel, a dark and miserable cave filled with trainers who, for some reason, decided this was a great place to hang out. While fumbling through the shadows, we encountered Connect 4 the Matchop, adding some much-needed fighting power to our lineup. Eventually, we stumbled out the other side, emerging in Lavender Town. Continuing through it and onto Route 8, we picked up Battleship the Growlithe, a fiery new addition before pressing on to Celadon City. Upon arrival, we did what any responsible trainer would do. Ignore all the pressing objectives and immediately hit the game corner. After gambling for an embarrassingly long time, we finally saved up enough coins to buy ourselves Solitaire the Dratini. Totally worth it. With our new dragon in the PC, it was time to prep for Erika's gym. We evolved Rummy into Fearow, but we also took Perudo, the now Nidorino, along purely because we needed Cut to even get access to the gym. And Perudo does also know Peck. Time to face the Queen of Grass types. With Rummy the Fearow leading the charge, we stepped into Erika's gym. A paradise for grass types, but not exactly a safe haven when you've got Wings and Aerial Ace on your side. Victory Bell came out first, and while Rummy landed a clean Aerial Ace, we got hit with Stun Spore, leaving us paralysed. Erika healed, but our next Aerial Ace critted, taking the carnivorous plant down in a one-shot. Tangela followed, setting up Ingrain to try and outlast us, but repeated Aerial Aces eventually wore it down. Finally, Vileplume entered the field. Despite the paralysis, Rummy refused to miss, landing every single Aerial Ace until the final Grass type hit the floor, a Rummy masterclass. With the Rainbow Badge in hand, it was time for a bittersweet farewell. Rummy had flown into retirement at the Luxury Pool Resort. But he wasn't going alone. Perudo the Nidorino joined them, who had been dragged along just to use Cut. But he had also served his purpose. Without him, we'd have never gotten into the gym in the first place. Both earned their rest, 4 badges down, and time for a little gym detour. With Rocket HQ wide open, we stormed into the game corner hideout, clearing out grunts and picking up some key upgrades along the way. Jaipur evolved into Pidgeotto, and Boggle had an absolute field day, wrecking an Arbok with 2 flinches and a critical hit, reminding everyone why he's still running the show. Deep inside the underground office, we confronted Giovanni for the first time. Turns out he wasn't ready for Connect 4, who went full asparagus mode and flattened his entire team with low kick. Giovanni bailed, mistakenly dropping the Silphco in his haste to escape. With that, our next stop was Lavender Town. On the way, Mahjong evolved into Electrode, while Connect 4 bulked up into Macho, getting closer to his true forearm potential. Gary was waiting for us inside the Pokemon Tower, eager to smack talk before promptly getting himself smacked. With him out of the way though, we pushed forward through the floors, encountering Mysterium the Ghastly, who joined the team. Eventually, we came face to face with the ghost. Scooby-Doo instincts kicked in, but unfortunately, running wasn't an option. Instead, we had to fight it. We got creative. Mysterium hit Curse, putting Marowak on a timer, but then a misplay that cost us dearly arrived. Thinking Bonemerang was a normal type move, I swapped into Mahjong, only for the attack to crit and take down our newly evolved Electrode. One of the fastest Pokemon we had, gone in an instant. Rest in peace, Mahjong, gone far too soon. That was a serious misplay and completely unnecessary. I've got to be more careful from here on out. Shaken but determined, we powered through Team Rocket at the top, rescued Mr. Fuji from their grasp, and after escorting him home, he rewarded us with the Poker Flute. No time wasted, we immediately made our way to Route 16, where we woke up and caught Uno the Snorlax. A tanky new addition, and we followed it up by catching Operation the Magikarp as we rolled our way into Fuchsia. After arriving in Fuchsia City, we made some major upgrades, Catan evolving into Butterfree, and Boggle reached his final form as Blastoise. But before we could celebrate, we had a major challenge ahead, Koga. For this fight, we went in with just Catan the Butterfree, a risky but a very calculated choice. Coughing led the battle, but a quick sleep powder followed by a side beam made sure he'd never even got the chance to fight back. Then came Muck, a minimized spammer who could turn into a serious nightmare if left unchecked. Thankfully, sleep powder landed, and we chipped away with Psybeam. After a tense back and forth, a critical hit sealed the deal before Muck could start dodging into oblivion. Coughing number 2 was no issue, another Psybeam, another knockout. Then, Weezing entered the field, Koga's ace, and the one thing standing between us and victory. We landed a sleep powder, but the next turn, Koga used a full heal. I have hand on heart never seen that happen before in a game of Pokemon. I've never seen a gym leader do that, but fair enough. Undeterred with those unusual antics, we hit Psybeam, then another, and somehow, despite the risk of explosion, poison, or even missing our key attacks, Catan took down Koga's entire team without getting hit once. And with that, the Soul Badge was ours, and Catan retired in perfect condition. No scars, no bruises, just a well-earned trip to the Luxury Ball Resort, where it could flutter freely among the tropical flowers, completely unbothered. 5 badges down, 3 more to go. Before pressing on, we made some important additions to the team. Twister the Doduo from Route 17, and Yahtzee the Execute from the Safari Zone. While exploring, we also raced to the secret safari house, claiming Surf as our pride. Along the way, we also stumbled upon a pair of teeth. Completely normal thing to just find lying on the ground. Against all better judgment, we actually picked them up, and we returned them to the warden who, instead of questioning why we were touching random dental remains, rewarded us with the Strength HM. With that handled, we made a quick detour to Celadon, where we snagged a hot drink from the tea lady, because apparently, this was the universal key to opening up the next area. Acting as a sort of Kanto Uber Eats, we handed it over to the gate guard without receiving a tip, and just like that, we had full access to Saffron City. With Saffron finally opened up, it was time to take the fight to Team Rocket inside Silphco. We bulldozed our way through their ranks, eventually running into Gary, who despite his usual smack talk, once again was swept aside. As a reward for our troubles, we were gifted Jumanji the Lapras, a tanky water type that would prove invaluable. And with our rival out the way, we confronted Giovanni for a second time. The result? A dominant win. The leader fled once more, leaving us to claim victory and save the Silphco president. With Rocket HQ dismantled, there was only one thing left to do, and that was take on Sabrina's gym. With Mysterium evolving into Haunter and Twister reaching its final form as Dodrio, we had the duo ready for the next challenge. Kadabra led the fight, but a single Shadow Punch from Mysterium sent it packing before it could even move. Next up was Mr. Mime, who threw up a barrier to bulk up its defenses and was healed to full. It took 3 Shadow Punches, but in the end, Mysterium broke through. Then came Alakazam, Sabrina's ace. We swapped to Twister, who tanked a Psychic before striking back with a Tri-Attack, taking down the spoon-bending menace with just one hit. Finally, Venomoth entered the field. Our first Tri-Attack wasn't quite enough, and it retaliated, dropping Twister to just 14 HP. Sabrina tried to heal, but back-to-back attacks sealed the win. With the Marsh badge in hand, it was time to say goodbye. Both Mysterium and Twister had earned their retirement. Mysterium, the ever-mischievous Spectre, now runs a haunted house attraction at the Luxury Ball Resort, jump-scaring all the other retired Pokemon for fun. Twister, on the other hand, has set up a speed training program for any Pokemon looking to work on their health. There's just one problem. No one's keeping up. Except Mahjong might have. After these heroics, we set sail and reached Cinnabar Island before immediately detouring all the way back to Pewter City just to steal back from the past. At the museum, we negotiated for the old amber, because what's better than having a giant, extinct, flying dinosaur? We immediately flew back to Cinnabar, handed it over into the lab, and welcomed Monopoly the Aerodactyl to the team. A terrifyingly fast powerhouse and a solid insurance policy for later fights. With science on our side, we headed to the Pokemon Mansion, dodging burglar trainers and rats until we snagged the secret key from the basement. The door to Blaine's gym was now wide open. Before heading in though, we flew to Vermilion to grab our final piece, Poker the Shelder. This little clam was single-handedly going to solve Blaine's gym for us, and after evolving into Cloyster, it was time for one of their easiest fights in history, so I'll be brief. Growlithe, 1 Surf KO. Ponyta, 1 Surf KO. Rapidash, 1 Surf KO. Arcanine, 1 Surf KO. 4 moves, 4 knockouts, 1 badge, 1 retirement. With the Volcano badge in hand, Poker calls it quits, heads off to the Luxury Ball Resort where it set up an exclusive shellfish bar serving the best water-type Pokemon in town. It feels a bit cannibalistic, but business has been booming. That's 7 badges down, and 1 obstacle remains. It's time to settle things with Giovanni once and for all. We turned to Jumanji the Lapras, the full-fledged sea monster, fully trained it up, and we marched straight into Viridian Gym for the final stand. The strategy was simple. We'll rain dance and surf everything into oblivion. Rhyhorn opened up and tried to slow us down with Scary Face, but a boosted surf just washed it away. Level 50 Rhyhorn, an identical fate. 1 surf and it was gone. Nidoqueen managed to land an earthquake, but Jumanji tanked it like a champ before wiping her out with another surf. Then Nidoking stepped in, but history repeated itself for the Monarchs. 1 hit, 1 knockout. Dugtrio was Giovanni's final hope. It landed a slash, but without a critical hit, it stood no chance. 1 final surf and the Viridian Gym Leader was finished. Jumanji's reign of terror was over and we had the Earth Badge. No longer needed in battle, we retired Jumanji to the Luxury Ball Resort, where he immediately claimed ownership of the resort's largest swimming pool. Rumours say he's turned it into a personal water park, and if you want in, you're gonna have to pay him in berries. With the 8 badges in hand, we took on Gary one last time. Or at least, we hoped it was the last time. Another routine beatdown later, and we left him in the dust on Route 22 and pressed forward towards the Pokemon League. Through the badge check gates, we flashed each hard-earned badge, proving our worth at every step. Then came Victory Road, the final challenge before the Indigo Plateau. But instead of battling our way through, we took the stealth route, weaving past every single trainer with max repels on our sides, and we slipped through each puzzle with 0 interruptions. No battles, no setbacks, just a straight shot to the final destination. And at last, we arrived at the Indigo Plateau, the stage for our final challenge. The Elite Four stood between us and victory. It was time to build the perfect team, plan our strategy, and take on the toughest gauntlet yet. The level cap for the Pokemon League is the highest level Pokemon of the Elite Four members, which in this game is Drake's level 60 Dragonite. So we have to get our Pokemon to that level. Here's the team I went for. First up, Boggle the Blastoise. Our humble starter had to make it. Powerhousing through Rocket Grunts, it was a huge component, so I treated it to an Ice Beam TM and laid the groundwork for a rain-setting monster. Secondly, Battleship the Arcanine. This Intimidator will be brilliant against any grass type, and there's 100% one of those lurking at the end, a staple of Kanto Fire-type heritage. Our third choice is Otello the Magneton. Caught as a Magnemite in the power plant whilst planning for this final challenge, an electric type is an absolute necessity for a number of Pokemon we face, and the steel typing is a real dream for resistances. Maybe Mahjong would have filled this role, but Cubone's mother had other ideas. Welcome to the team, Othello. Fourth to the platform is Uno, the Snorlax. It's a Gen 1 staple, and this podgy snoozer can have access to Shadow Ball with a TM. It seems like a real no-brainer to take to Agatha because of its resistances and its access to Shadow Ball and heavy attacking moves. I think it's a must for the Elite Four. Next up is Monopoly the Aerodactyl, a favourite of mine within Battle Frontier runs on Emerald. This quick heavy hitter is a brutal behemoth. The Rock Tunnel Tutor taught it Rock Slide for some devastating output, and Ancient Power is a nice option for a setup. Finally, can you guess it? We're gonna go for Garrett Dragonite. I know Gyarados is unbelievable, but I didn't want another water type and I was never going to drop Boggle. So after training Solitaire as an unevolved Dratini all the way to level 50, we get access to Outrage earlier than Dragonite should normally have it. It's a generic pick, but I don't think I've ever used one of these pre-Elite Four, so now is a better time than any. We started this journey as just another nameless trainer, fresh out of Pallet Town with nothing but a dream and a Squirtle. Since then, we've caught allies, lost friends, and sent champions to retire in the Luxury Ball Resort. We've faced 8 gym leaders, countless rivals, and an entire criminal empire. And through it all, we have survived. We trained, we planned, and now it's time to fight. The doors open. The final gauntlet begins. The first opponent stood before us is Lorelei, the Ice Queen of the Pokemon League. We opened up with Othello, leading the charge against her Dugong. In a moment of pure silly goose, we accidentally clicked Reflect. A relatively useless move in this fight, but mistakes wouldn't define this battle. A single Thunderbolt corrected the course, zapping the seal out of existence. Cloyster was next, immediately playing the stall game with back-to-back protects, desperately trying to delay the inevitable, but it couldn't hide forever. The moment it let its guard down, we struck. 1 Thunderbolt, 1 KO. Then came Slowbro, a tanky menace that could become a real problem if left unchecked. But we didn't give it the chance. Thunderbolt struck home, and just like that, it was gone before it could even get going. That was when Lorelei sent in Lapras, her real ace. We hit it with a Thunderbolt, but before we could celebrate, it retaliated with a Confuse Ray. That was too much of a gamble. 1 turn of bad luck and it could swing the fight against us. We played it safe and switched into Boggle, as Lorelei healed her monster. Instead of hitting back with brute force, we went for Bite, just to push Lapras into Thunderbolt range. With it weakened, we swapped Othello back in and shook off a Body Slam before finishing the job with a final Thunderbolt. Finally was Jinxed, the last obstacle. It turned into a battle of attrition, Thunderbolts versus Ice Punches, but Othello stood firm, trading blows with Jinx until it collapsed for good. The first Elite Four member had fallen, 1 down, 3 to go. Yes, I know I said Othello in 400 different ways then. Get used to it. We stepped forward into the second chamber. Bruno, the fighting type master, stood ready, his team built for brute force and relentless aggression. Leading with Boggle the Blastoise, we wasted no time wiping out Onix with a single surf, sending the Rock Serpent straight to the depths. But Bruno wasn't phased. His Hitmonchan stepped in next, fists ready to fly. We decided to set up Rain Dance, boosting our water attacks, but Rock Tomb clipped us, dropping our speed. Now faster, Hitmonchan struck with its Sky Uppercut. It landed a solid hit before we could fire back, but with Rain on our side, Surf crashed down with extra force and we take it down after a back and forth. Hitmonlee came up next, and we took this as the perfect moment to introduce Solitaire into the fight. We soared into the air and crashed down with an instant knockout. Then came Machamp, a powerhouse but a slow one. Solitaire flew up again, dodging the bulky Titan's attacks before landing another fly, sending the 4-armed fighter to the floor. Finally, Bruno sent out his second Onix. We swapped into Uno, who tanked a Double Edge, followed by an Earthquake. But Snorlax retaliated with its own. The 2 giants exchanged earthquakes, shaking the battlefield with every strike until finally Onix crumbled under the pressure. Bruno was defeated. With the fighter out of the way, we stepped into the next room to face Agatha. We led with Uno, the Snorlax, I'll stop doing that, knowing its Shadow Ball would be perfect to counter Agatha's tricky Spectres. As expected, her Gengar opened up with Double Team, trying to disappear into the shadows, but Uno wasn't having it. Shadow Ball connected, landing a devastating 1-hit KO. Golbat swooped in next, and this one put up more of a fight. We exchanged blows, but through the dizziness we got given, Body Slam landed, grounding the bat for good. Then came Arbok, and with an Intimidate weakening Uno's attack, we didn't want to risk it. We swapped into Othello, letting the Steel type wipe a Sludge Bomb off its silver coat like it was nothing before switching Uno back in. Agatha wasn't done though. Screech hit twice, turning Uno into a glass cannon. We fired off Earthquake, but it wasn't quite enough for the KO. Agatha healed, but this time we landed a high roll, burying Arbok with a second Earthquake. Her second Gengar entered the battlefield, and we sent in Othello, who miraculously dodged 2 Hypnosis attempts before landing Thunderbolt for some solid damage. On the next turn though, it finally connects, putting Othello to sleep. We weren't sleeping on tactics though, and we immediately swapped Uno back in, who completely ignored Shadow Ball, tanked a Sludge Bomb, and answered with a Shadow Ball of its own. Gengar returned to the grave for good. Her final Pokemon Haunter stepped up. It went for Hypnosis, but it missed again, and Uno responded with a final Shadow Ball, ending the fight right there and then. Agatha was defeated, 3 down, and 1 more Elite Four member to go. It was time for Drake. His Dragon-type team was built for sheer power and endurance, but we had a plan. The battle opened with Gyarados. Unfortunately for Drake, we were prepared and Othello stepped up and ended it with a Thunderbolt in a one-hit KO. Next came Dragonair, so we swapped to Boggle the Blastoise. It hit us with Outrage, but we stayed firm, responding with an Ice Beam for massive super effective damage. Dragonair couldn't hold on, and it went down after a series of Ice Beams. Then the second Dragonair came in, same play, same Ice Beam spam, another Dragon down. But then came the real test, Dragonite. This was Drake's ace, the one Pokemon that could tear through an unprepared team. We swapped back into Othello, who took a brutal Hyper Beam before we used its recharge turn to land a Thunderbolt. Dragonite was still standing, of course, so we responded by paralysing it with Thunder Wave, making sure it would never move first again as it used Safeguard. With that advantage, we put up Reflect to cut its damage in half, just as it launched into an Outrage. And what followed was a grueling back and forth, hit after hit, Thunderbolt after Thunderbolt, until Dragonite finally fell. Drake's final Pokemon, Aerodactyl, entered the field, so we swapped into the Snorlax, just as Aerodactyl struck with Ancient Power. The boost didn't activate, thankfully, and it followed up with a wing attack, but Uno simply absorbed the hit and started spamming Shadow Ball. 1 hit, 2 hits, 3 hits. Aerodactyl fell, and Drake had been defeated. Now it's time for the final fight. And there he was. Gary again, smug as ever, standing at the peak, convinced that he'd already won. He had beaten the Elite Four before us, claimed the title of champion, and now he stood between us and the ultimate victory. But we hadn't come this far to lose. Every gym we'd beaten, every Pokemon we've retired, every decision we've made, and of course, Mahjong. It had all led to this moment, and this was the final fight. Gary opened up with Pidgeot, a familiar face, but it stood no chance. Othello struck with a Thunderbolt, dropping it instantly. Next came Arcanine, and we swapped to Boggle. It took a Flamethrower, then an Extreme Speed, but the veteran Blastoise endured and fired back. Surf landed, critical hit, one Flaming Hound hit the ground. Then Venusaur stepped in, ready to turn the tide. We swapped into Battleship the Arcanine, watching as Venusaur charged up a Solar Beam. We struck with Flamethrower, burning it down to a slither of health before Solar Beam fired, cutting Battleship's HP in half. Gary saw an opening. He healed his Venusaur, but we weren't playing his game. We fired off another Flamethrower, and he made a desperate switch into Rhydon to spare his starter. We immediately swapped into Boggle, only to be met with a massive Earthquake. But Boggle didn't drop. 1 4 times effective Surf, and the Rock Titan was gone. This is where Venusaur returned, and this time we sent out Monopoly the Aerodactyl. The prehistoric predator soared into the sky as Gary healed before we repetitively struck down with Fly. The mossy beast finally fell. With only 2 Pokemon left, Gary sent in Gyarados. We swapped into Othello knowing exactly what needed to be done. 1 Thunderbolt, a critical hit, and the Sea Serpent was obliterated. And in that moment, something strange happened. Othello tried to learn Zap Cannon. Was this fate? A sign that it wanted to deliver the final blow? The metal core demanding more from itself? Only 1 Pokemon remained. Alakazam. It came out and immediately struck with Psychic, hitting hard. We fired a 50-50 Zap Cannon, and it connected. But it wasn't enough. Alakazam was left standing, but paralysed, and thanks to its Synchronize ability, Othello was now paralysed too. It wasn't written in the stars, buddy. I knew Gary was about to heal, so I swapped into Monopoly on a safe switch. Our fossilised fiend launched a Rock Slide that made contact with Alakazam, Gary's final Pokemon, and it was gone. Gary had fallen, we had won, we were the champion. Wow, this run has been a journey, full of risks, victories, and fortunately very few casualties, although rest in peace Mahjong, I really did mess up there. But more than anything, it's been a lot of fun, and that's all thanks to you guys. Whether you've been here from the start or just joined along the way, your support has made this challenge worth every second. The comments, the discussion, the hype, the 3,000 subscribers, thank you very much. It's all been unreal. I never expected this series to take off the way it has, and I can't thank you enough for watching, engaging, and just being a part of the ride. I've had an absolute blast making this, and trust me, this isn't the end, so really do consider subscribing. We're only just getting started. So from me, thank you for embracing the chaos, and I'll see you at the Luxury Pool Resort.